A very good evening and welcome to The Bottom Line, a wrap of some of your top business news stories of the day. My name is Nzinga Qunta and we begin as usual with the number of the day. Today that number is 29.1%. That, according to Statistics South Africa, is the amount of working age South Africans who were unemployed in the fourth quarter of 2019. That's the same figure as in the third quarter of 2019. So what does this mean? While 6.7 million working age South Africans are unemployed in the fourth quarter, that number decreased by a paltry 8,000. The number of employed people increased by 45,000 to 16.4 million. Let's take a look at the labour sector in our country now. I'm joined from our Pretoria studio by Professor Alfred Wilke from the Gordon Institute of Business Science. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. Should we be celebrating that 29.1% figure stayed the same in quarter three and quarter four, and perhaps it didn't get worse?
Hi, good evening, Nzinga. Thank you for having me here. I don't think it's any cause for celebration. And if you look at the report, you'll see there are some changes and possible trends that we can identify. But it's an absolute dismal number, and I think we've got a jobs crisis.
Formal sector.
And it's an absolute jobs crisis.
Yeah. So the formal sector recorded the largest employment increase of 117,000. And then the agricultural sector as well, recording an increase of 6,000. What should we read into those numbers, if anything?
I think some of the numbers we need to also look at are that craft and trade have seen big losses. So those type of jobs, it's the type of jobs that have been lost and the type of jobs that have been gained. So it looks to me that we're beginning to see the impact of the artificial intelligence, the fourth industrial revolution, if some people want to use that terminology. But we're seeing mechanization, we're seeing automation coming into play. A big concern is the huge amount of jobs that are lost in manufacturing and construction. And those jobs have largely been offset by services, community services and the like. If we look at the particular occupations, that should also be cause for concern.
Mm-hmm. So when we look at the informal sector, we're seeing that there's been a loss of about 77,000 jobs there. What should we read into that? And perhaps are more people getting employed in the formal sector and moving away from the informal sector?
I think what had a great impact on that was, if you recall, towards the end of last year, in the last quarter of last year, there was a court case that changed the status of, or confirmed the status of people who were employed by labour brokers. And they were now permanent employees, they were your employees, and many companies would have adjusted to deal with that.
Okay.
But I think so that would have most certainly impacted on the informal sector employment. And also the agricultural sector is a big absorber of informal jobs. And we've seen that the agricultural sector, particularly in the last year, the jobs in the agricultural sector have gone up skilled. They've been higher skilled agricultural jobs. So the lesser skilled elementary jobs are unfortunately disappearing.
Let's talk about that. When we look at the people who are unemployed, a large majority of those people do not have a matric. I think it's around 55%. People who had a matric, 34.7%, and then only 1.9% of unemployed people were graduates, and about 6.8% of those were people with other tertiary qualifications. Does South Africa need to look at creating jobs that absorb people who have a matric qualification or less, if we're just looking at those figures? And how do they do that without kind of harking back to those very exploitative labour patterns that we have as a country of people who are not educated?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely the crisis here. But I think that, or what we're going to see with as more and more automation enters into the workplace, is we're going to see jobs at the lower end. There will be more jobs at the lower end, but those jobs will be different. And the type of jobs that, or the type of skills that are in demand, and more so, are dependent on whether you can access a screen, whether you can access the internet, and whether you can speak the language of the internet. So those are the type of jobs we'd be looking for. What's also very concerning about the report is the loss of jobs in craft and trade occupations. And that is definitely the impact of automation. And interestingly, the growth is in jobs for clerks, which really is showing that the whole labor market is undergoing quite a dramatic change. And our schooling system has to catch up to that very, very quickly. Otherwise, we're going to be sitting with a much bigger problem that we have. Because into the future, you're going to have a security guard, for instance. A security guard more and more is going to need to work with a screen, is going to be needing to work with technology that they're going to have to interact with. We're already seeing it. Wherever you go somewhere, they're already scanning your license. You're seeing very, very few places where you're actually physically taking a pen and getting access anywhere. And that's going to increase and increase. We're also seeing whole industries that are coming up. A phenomenon of a dark kitchen. So you'll be ordering your food online via an app, and it'll be prepared in a kitchen that will be preparing for several different companies, and that kitchen doesn't have a storefront. And we'll see a lot more of that. So it doesn't bode well for the old traditional jobs like domestic worker and so on. And I think we're also seeing that, or I know we're also seeing that, and it's very, very clear that, and the Black Friday showed it, it's absolutely clear that even in the trade sector, in retail, things are changing. So traditionally in South Africa, the big retailers would recruit around about October for the Christmas season, and then they would be retrenching in January. But we haven't seen that in this last year as much. And that is probably an indicator of online, Black Friday, and the change of people's shopping patterns, as well as a tough economy.
Thank you very much for your time this evening. Professor Alfred Wilke joining us from our Pretoria studio. He's a professor in human resources at the Gordon Institute of Business Science.